Thank you. I'm really lucky to be here, really pleased by the audience, and yeah, happy to share my talk with you under the title Rethinking Urban Landscape. Yeah, even though yeah, my role here in Lviv was a special one. It was our first project here, and it was and will be always a special one about a memorial site for the Jewish history in the old city, in the Jewish quarter of Lviv. That's another topic, so I'm going to go to another scale and don't go directly to this topic. Yeah, 10 minutes are short, so I try to get through. Yeah, the basic question, I hope you can read it, is how do we want to live together in the future? That's the question also the International Building Exhibition in the Ruhrgebiet in Germany asks, and we try to answer them doing some competitions in this Bauausstellung. And yeah, that's a question that is also about urban landscape. And in the end, I try to get some points to answer this question. Yeah, as inspiration and background, maybe my own childhood in Leipzig in the 80s and 90s, shrinking cities, demolishing what didn't remain from the GDR history, as well as very inspirational book by Martha Cooper, known for graffiti documentation in the 1970s, but she also did a documentation about street play in the 1970s in the broken down Bronx and other parts of New York City. Great photos, as well as yeah, my personal stays here in Lviv from 2010 to now on, and with the first photos from the competition brief to the photos I made last day on a walk through the city. This is inspiration about urban landscape, about people in urban landscape, in urban public space. To get to these definitions or terms, public space may be used by anybody at any time. It's the property for the entire population. Urban landscape, I would describe it as yeah, define two types. That's parks and green spaces, which could refer more to the landscape aspect, but it also could be leftover spaces and in-between spaces. Doesn't have to be the designed ones. And clearly differentiable is the inner city urban space, as you know, squares, promenades, and streets, but it's also a kind of in-between space, the everyday life space. Yeah, we are working in the office only on these public spaces. These are yeah, like dots on a map where we participate in competitions about these questions. And the first one for us was in Lviv, yeah, in the east, and all the others were competitions, and we yeah, not every time win. And these are the points where we work on projects about public spaces. We are the only doing these ones, do not collaborate in any other kind of tasks. And the scale of these projects is quite wide-ranging, from the smallest projects like the first part of the synagogue square or the space of synagogues to large parks on former horse race areas, or even in the wide landscape from 800 square meters to 40,000 square meters to 400,000 square meters. And also the budget ranges, as well as the context of in the city and its scale. So I'll try to get through yeah, different typologies, different contexts, and where public spaces arises and or are situated, and try to describe some aspects. For me, there are a few basic aspects that are known, maybe also have been talked about yesterday or in the last 2 or 3 years already. It's the future of our public spaces, as well as open spaces, as well as the whole architecture and urbanism world. It's the question, how do we want to build tomorrow? How do we want to handle and deal with things like the climate change and like green-blue infrastructure and climate resiliency. We have to talk about new mobility concepts, but this is something I don't want to focus that much. It's something like the basis. And of course, we're going to talk about social space, about robust and adaptable structures. We don't know the future yet. And then coming more close to the two different types that I want to talk about, it's the public green spaces, which are very important for the climate adaptive areas. Their multi-programming is highly important because the cities are getting denser and denser, and the use of public space is even more intense. And parks are also ecological niches. The focus on not only human design towards animal-aided design is also highly important. The inner city urban space faces a big problem. I don't know an answer yet. This is the future of shopping. This is the future of commerce. We don't know how these spaces that we are used to as public streets with shops in the streets gonna look in the future. And how could we handle tourism, over tourism? How could we not sell out our cities? The two questions below, how do we want to build better from now on? And what are critical aspects we don't know the answer yet, or which are hard to manage? These are things I can't show you best practice for each problem. It's just like we have to think about it together. First thing, which is highly important, is stop privatizing public space by cars. This is from an exhibition we did in the office, like 1,000 parking spaces that we erased in 3 different sites. It's 3 smaller cities in Germany, Wiesbaden, Aalen, and Minden. Altogether, they blocked like 2.5 hectares of public space. Afterwards, they're gonna be a park, an urban square, and a promenade. You have to rethink the parking because it blocks the most space that we got in our streets, in our cities, in our villages by private interest. I've been to Japan in the beginning of this year, and even though I don't know the car quote, as we talked about yesterday, if it's 23, 29, or even more %, but what they did consequently is there's no car on public space. In any city, in no village, there's always clearly regulated, there's no car on the streets. Coming towards the urban inner city spaces, what we call in Germany the Fußgängerzone or shopping street, clear typology. Yeah, the problem is, how is the future of shopping? What do we do in these spaces when there is no shopping anymore? If it's online, if it's in the outsides of the city, and how do we develop urbanity further on? Mostly the task is to redesign the surface as visible in the lower right picture. It's not the end. Clearly, there needs to be done the infrastructure underneath, but there's a clear relation between urban planning, architecture, and public space. If we go on with the thinking about inner city shopping areas, this is a project in Vienna, in the Seestadt Aspern, realized until 2030 maybe. There's still the question, how does the future look like? What uses are in the first floor, on the ground floor? How is the interaction between architecture and public space? How green can a city be? How green can streets be? How does infrastructure, as here a tram, could be integrated in such an inner city space? Is it car traffic free, slower, but is it lively? In the same urban development, there's the grüne Seite, a more living area orientated open space. And I think there is a picture which is more friendly in a way, but also the architecture is hidden behind the green, is set back to give more light to the open space, and is reduced to a green space and only live at urban cores like squares or small parks. But the future of the 2 minutes, okay. But the future of these urban shopping streets is something, yeah, I would like to discuss as well in combination or together with urban planners and architects. How do we want to build? What can we afford to do? What needs to be done? What is reasonable? I just want to show 3 pictures. You could imagine maybe it's existing pictures. There needs something to be done. No, it's a realized project. Only the surface is treated to make it better accessible to wheelchair passengers as well to everybody. Small furniture interventions. You couldn't do less, I think. Then one very important thing, I think, also for the Ukrainian cities as well as Lviv, or especially Lviv, yeah, how to deal with the contrast between event and everyday life. People want to live in these cities. People want to visit these cities, but how could this be combined under the aspect of over-tourism? Could it be just set aside in the evening, like one picture in the right in Erfurt? Coming to, in 1 minute, to the aspect of green open spaces as a new typology. It's not only the design parks, it's the large voids, the unprogrammed rough landscape areas that are left over and integrated in the new urban life, as the Berlin Tempelhofer Feld, for example. There's nothing beside space. People search and find their own way to use it. Is this the future? For our parks, we have to accept the roughness, the wildness, the unprogrammedness. We have to also rethink, where do we put uses? Could we set them apart? Or do we have to combine them in one area just to bring people together to create social spaces? Designing for all means to think not only for the elderly, also for the children of tomorrow. So for us, most often the design starts with really thinking about lower steps, lower benches, very in the detail maybe, but it's something to, I think is highly important to create spaces usable for everyone. The climate change brings new pictures, looks like a savanna or a desert. We are looking for the shade of the trees existing. They need to be kept in any case, and only minimal interventions like here in Munich could be a solution to assess new open spaces without spending too much, without big intervention. And then last slide, it's about the long time perspective of public spaces, especially parks. Yeah, I think we have to think further, but then take a pause. Also take time to think about the maintenance, the development of these parks. This is one example from Augsburg, from Lohaus Karl. It is a park from 2005. Last year, it received a prize in Germany, and yeah, they said it's never finished. And the special thing is that the city, as well as the planner, are still thinking and meeting up for the development of this park regarding climate change, differentiated or developed uses. And so the park is still in process, which I highly appreciate. Yeah, one slide to imagine livable everyday cities and public spaces, may they be in Paris, in Copenhagen, or in Berlin, or in Lviv. It's more the everyday life space that needs to be thought through in the upcoming years. Really last slide. How do we want to live together in the future? Modest, communicative, and active. Modest, to me, the most important thing. Work with the existing, build on. Don't sell out your city and public space. Don't leave it to the cars. Accept and increase the green and the unprogrammed in the city. Keep and create urbanity, not as an event, but as a basis for everyday life. Taking a pause is also highly important, not to go too fast through a phase of problems. So I think that's it.